Hello friends, it's Kristie Marcotte. I recently watched a couple videos from Scrapbena Creations and Mary Polanco. They did a collaboration using the mini stamp set Get Well Soon by Fawn. I just loved all the amazing cards they created with such a small stamp set. So I decided to use the same stamp set and make a few cards as well. I added links to both of their videos in the description box. Definitely go and check them out. For my cards, I'm using an older Doodlebug paper pad called Sugar Shoppe. I can't find a link for the paper pad, so it may not be available anymore. Now, unlike Jen and Mary, I won't be doing any coloring. The images are simple and small enough for easy coloring, but I decided to do some paper piecing instead. For my first card, I'm using a sketch from Queen & Company. Queen & Company's sketches were designed to coordinate with their foundation dies. So all of the dies I'm using on this card are by Queen & Company. I've selected two different pattern papers for the background of the card. I have that busier pattern with those circles with the flowers in the center as the larger piece, and then some tone-on-tone pink polka dot paper for the top. So my very first card, I already had to pull up some of the paper since I forgot to adhere the pink polka dot paper down underneath the flower paper. But since I had just put the ATG tape on the backside, it was easy enough to peel up, but to make sure it was going to stay in place, I did add some liquid adhesive. Now for this piece going across the card, I used a stitched rectangle die. This is another one by Queen & Company. It's white and has a bunch of tiny little colorful polka dots on there. And for the image box on the card, I cut this out of some white pearlescent paper. It adds a nice shimmer. I selected several of the pattern papers to stamp the images. I wanted to choose things that weren't too busy, so these are a lot of tone-on-tone designs. And I'll just be cutting these out just right against the black outline edge. So I'm just going to show one of them. So I have the little band-aid stamped on some orange chevron paper. And there are dies available. I don't have them, but I will add a link in the description box. They're a little harder to find because this is an older stamp set. So once I have that cut out, just to cover up the white edge, I take a black marker and just run it all along that outside edge. So there are all the pieces that I'm going to use for this card. I'm going to start with the little bird, this little nurse. The bird is stamped on some really thin diagonal yellow and white paper, but I wanted the nurse's hat to stand out, so I stamped that on some white paper. And then I also cut off the legs of the bird just because they're really hard to fussy cut around. And then instead I stamped just the lower portion of that bird on this little pink circle. And now I can just glue all of the pieces together so the little bird still has legs, no worries. And then I'll just use some liquid adhesive to adhere that circle to the card. I will be following this sketch fairly closely. There's only one sentiment included on the mini stamp set, and this is Get Well Soon. So I just used some pink ink to stamp that out. Now I'm going to use all of the other little pieces that I've already cut out, and I'll just figure out the arrangement I want for that image box. For a couple of the images, I'm just putting some liquid adhesive on the back and gluing them directly onto that white pearlescent paper. And then the others I'm going to pop up using some thin foam squares, just to add a little extra dimension. These are still thin enough that you could mail this card easily without having to pay extra postage. I have a couple of the band-aids sitting over on the right-hand side, and then one last band-aid that's sitting on the left-hand side. I love the little smiley face stamp that's included, so you can have those band-aids without the smile if you choose. But the little smiley face makes those band-aids look super cute. I'm just using the small heart that's included on the stamp set and filling in some of the white space on this image box. Just using some Catherine Pooler pink ink. Now just a few finishing touches. I'm adding some glossy accents to the hearts on the pill bottles, just to add a little extra detail. And then the bird needed some color on its beak. I didn't like it with just that same yellow and white stripe. So I'm just adding some ripened pumpkin Nouveau crystal drops to the beak. Just put a tiny bit because that beak is pretty small. And then just one more finishing touch. I'm using some Nouveau glitter drops. This is the white blizzard color, and I just put it on the tops of both of the pill bottles. So there is my finished card, and I really like how this one turned out. It's very cheerful. Now moving on to card number 2. This sketch is by Sweet Sunday. This is number 151. And if you are interested in any of the sketches I share all of that information on my coordinating blog post, and that link is provided in the description box. For the background paper, I'm using some white pearlescent cardstock. And then for these 2 long rectangle pieces, I have some pink polka dot paper. The polka dots are really tiny. And I'm just layering all of these pieces on some pink cardstock. I love adding matted layers to my cards, and generally those matted layers are an additional 1/8 of an inch more than the pattern paper. So add on an 1/8 of an inch to the measurements that I provide on the sketches. Now I do alter those measurements all the time, just depends on what papers or images I'll be using. So let's go ahead and put my card front onto a card base. I've stamped out the sentiment, "Get well." I masked off the word "soon" since it was going to be too long for this card. Then I just cut a fishtail on the left-hand side. Now for this card, I'll be using the sweet little birdie again. I've already stamped the legs on this background pink piece. And then the nurse is going to be the same as it was on the previous card. So that same yellow and white striped paper. I have the white cardstock for the nurse's hat. Let's go ahead and stamp the little cross. I did get it a little lower than I would have liked, but I think that still worked out just fine. So I'll adhere the sentiment down, and then I can use some liquid adhesive to attach the circle with the image. And then next I'm going to pull in some of Love from Lizi's peel off stickers. This is the pink holographic color, and I'm just using a small piece, a little scrap, going underneath the sentiment. So the first piece I cut was a little too short, so I had to grab another one. I just love peel off stickers and try to use them as often as I can. They add such a lovely finish to the card. And I will provide a link in the description box if you want to check those out. Just a heads up, Love from Lizi is located in the UK, so there are international shipping fees. So for some finishing touches, I'm adding a couple of small stitched circle die cuts in that upper left-hand corner, and then some more Nouveau glitter drops. This is the enchanting pink color, and I'm just putting 3 of them underneath the little bird image. And then I can't forget to add a little orange to the bird's beak. So I have the ripened pumpkin Nouveau again. And I'm just using a scrap of cardstock to help spread that drop around so it doesn't go outside the lines. So there is my finished card, and this is card number 2. Now moving on to card number 3. This is my final card. The sketch is by Studio Calico. I've selected 3 different pattern papers. I have this fun striped paper for the background, some polka dot paper for this smaller rectangle piece, and I'm just going to layer all of these in that pink cardstock. It really helps add some contrast and also breaks up some of that busy paper. I used some orange tone-on-tone chevron paper for this small banner that will go behind that image. I'm just going to adhere that piece down. I felt it didn't need to have any extra layers. But I am going to pull in some more of Love from Lizi's pink holographic peel-offs. This is one of my favorite colors right now. And I'm just putting 2 of them on the bottom of the card. So I have the widest width and then the medium width. Just put 1 on top of each other. I do cut them a little wider than the paper. That way I can wrap the ends behind, and then they won't be able to come off later on the card. So I layered that background piece on some pink cardstock, add it to my card base. Now we'll go ahead and start working on the sentiment. I've already stamped this out on some light yellow cardstock, and I'm just going to layer it on some pink cardstock. Now before I adhere the sentiment down, I'm going to put some scrap cardstock on the right hand side of this piece. Since it's going off of that polka dot paper, it would dip down on that right hand side. So I just use a very small piece just to even it all out. Then I'm adding just this teeny piece of cardstock, just the pink cardstock right above the sentiment, just following the design of the sketch. Now I'll start working on the image. This card is going to feature the pill bottle in that pink polka dot paper, but I'm going to cut off the top of the bottle. So now the bottle's open, it spill all of the little pills out. And then I went and stamped the lid again on another piece, and then I'm just going to fussy cut that out real quick. And the reason I stamped it again versus using the one I cut off is I wanted to still have that nice outline edge on both of them. So I'm also using the marker just to go along the very outside of the paper. First, I'll glue down the open pill bottle, and then the lid is going to just sit right to the side. So I could have popped this up, but the pattern paper isn't really thick, so I think this still works without adding any extra dimension. And now I'm using the little heart stamp, and I'm just going to stamp a bunch of hearts coming out of the pill bottle. I think this would be a sweet way to send some love to someone who's not feeling very well. I'm just trying to fill in all of the spots that I feel need another heart. I want them to look fairly even, but also random. So now that I have the little image finished, I'm going to glue this scalloped circle onto my card. Decided to keep it fairly flat this time. Now I'll add the 3 small circle die cuts in that upper right hand corner. Now I searched through all of my dies trying to find 3 different sizes. I don't even remember what sets I pulled these from. I know I had some from a Lawn Fawn set with the planets. I think the smallest one was the dot to the letter J in an alphabet die set I have. Sometimes you just have to look at your dies a little differently. I decided to add a little band-aid right above the sentiment. I felt it needed just something there. I am popping it up using some foam dimensional squares and then also some scrap cardstock. So I'm just trying to keep this level, and since it is going over those other layers, using just the foam squares all across would have made one side sit up higher than the other. So once I have it fairly level, I can just go ahead and adhere it down. And now I'm going to pull out some sparkle and some shine. I'm using the Nuvo shimmer pen in the clear, adding it to the 3 circles and also the band-aid. Next, I'm going to use some glossy accents and put it on top of that sparkle on those 3 circles. It adds a really nice glossy shine, and it almost makes them look like brads, but without that extra dimension. I'm just trying to make sure I don't have any bubbles. And then I'll use the Nuvo glitter drops in the enchanting pink color for the heart on the pill bottle. Just want to wipe away a little bit that went outside the lines. And then one final touch, I'm using the glossy accents on the lid to the pill bottle. There is my finished card, and I love how all of these turned out. And I didn't do any coloring at all. Now here's just a quick recap of the 3 cards I made using Lawn Fawn's Get Well Soon mini stamp set. I was inspired to make these cards after watching Scrapbena Creations and Mary Polanco using the same stamp set. If you also own the Lawn Fawn set or a similar set and want to play along, be sure to tag them on social media so they can see what you create. Big thanks to both Jen and Mary for all of their inspiration. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day.